Hello everybody, it's Gayle. Today I think I'm going to play a little bit with alcohol inks and silk screens. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to be making. I just thought I would go with it, and I decided to turn the camera on just in case this turned out to be something worth showing. I've got about maybe a half a package. I sliced this off of a large package of a 1 pound section of clay, so I'm not sure how much this would be, but I'd say maybe a half a package of clay. I'm using white, and I'm going to use alcohol inks, but I've rolled the clay out to a number 3 on my machine, and number 0 is the thickest, so this is the 4th thickest. Or if you're going by the playing card method, it is 5 cards thick. So if you look at this, and if you stacked up 5 playing cards, that's the thickness that this is. That's a good trick for people that don't have pasta machines yet. They can take the playing cards and tape them together and use those to have even stacks on either side of your roller. Then you can roll with your roller and you'll get a flat piece. Luckily I do have a pasta machine. I have right now a Mercado, which is also the same as an Atlas, and it is the 150, so it's 5.5 inches wide. And I do have a motor. So I went for years without a motor, and now that I've got one, I don't know what I'd do if I had to crank again. But anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play with alcohol inks. And I probably ought to get out a little tray here, a little plate, and I'm going to put, this is Sun Bright Yellow, and I will probably end up with this all over me, but I just can't seem to work with gloves. And I probably should have started with the darker color. I think I'm going to start with this. Hopefully that yellow won't evaporate. This is Rainforest Green. And what I thought I would do is just take one of these cosmetic wedges, you know, that people use. And let me come in just a little bit. Excuse the camera jiggling, but I'm going to soak it into this sponge, and then I'm just going to dab on my white clay. And I used all that up. It's really soaked into this sponge. Maybe this isn't the way to do it. Let me try it again. But just dab it on. You don't want it solid. That would kind of defeat the whole purpose of doing it this way. But you can see I've got the green on there. And then I think I'm going to use some blue. My yellow's still there, so hopefully it'll last till I'm finished. Just squirt some on your sponge and start dabbing. And what you want to do pretty much is just make sure that all the white is covered. But I think that's pretty. And I'm just going to top it off with some yellow, just because blue and yellow make green, and I thought they would go well together and kind of soften. Ooh, look at that. But I'm going for, I don't want a solid look. I'm going for more of a dappled look. So there we go. We need to let the alcohol dry, which it doesn't take long at all. I should get my heat tool out and dry it that way, but I didn't think that far ahead. Let me try doing this a little bit. If it takes too long, I will just turn the camera off and come back when it's dry. I think that's probably a good idea. I'll be back in just a few minutes. Okay, while I'm waiting for this to dry, I just had another idea. I always keep a bottle of alcohol in a spray bottle on my table because I use it for all kinds of things. And I think I'm just going to give this a little spritz and see if it does anything. There you go. Can you see the little spots that are appearing? Kind of lost them over here, but I do have them over here. So now I need to wait for that alcohol to evaporate. So I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. I think it's dry now. I let it dry once and spritzed it a little bit more, so I got a little bit more of the mottled effect on this side, but still some plain, but that's okay. Then I'm going to take, this is dry. I think it's dry enough to use now. But I am going to use a Sculpey silk screen, and I've got this one that's got the round screens, but I don't think I don't have room but for 4 of them, so let me place these on here, and I'm placing this shiny side down. You always want to make sure you do shiny side down and make sure that it's on the clay. I might move this down just a little bit to make sure it's on the clay, and you want to make sure it's attached to your clay, so I'm going to use the squeegee that comes with it to smooth out this so that it is really stuck to my clay. And I took out the silver clay, paint only because that was already open. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to squirt a little bit of paint along the edge of the silk screen. You don't need a whole lot, but you do need enough to cover. And then take the squeegee or a credit card or anything else and just go over just make sure that your paint covers all the area that you want to cover. You can wipe it back off your squeegee. And I think I've got enough covered. I'm going to wipe this off. Just go over it one more time so I'll make sure I got all the extra paint off. I'm going to put that in a plate of water, and then I'm going to take the silk screen and I'm going to pull it up and immediately put that in water too, because you don't want the paint to dry on your silk screen. So hopefully you can see that. I'm afraid if I come in any closer, but let me zoom in a little bit. But you can see the silk screens. I think I can move my tray over, but you can see these. These are really pretty. This one in this corner is just a little series of dots, so it's not quite as obvious. But I think that worked real pretty. And this is just to show you that you can do silk screen over top of other other coloring methods. You can use it over the alcohol inks. You can marble your clay. You can use just about anything. But I wanted to put the silk screen on it last. And I got this is the medium circle. Let me see. It's a 2-inch circle from the Sculpey circle cutters. And I do believe that this will cut perfectly around this silk screen. Just want to center it. And I always like to use an acrylic block to push my cutters in. But make sure it's cut. And I'll do this one. Push it down and just give it a little turn to make sure it's cut all the way through. And this one. This is a neat looking design. And this one's not going to be quite as easy since it's just a series of dots, and I think that's getting it. I think that did it. And then pull up the rest of your clay, and you've got 3 very pretty cabochons or decorated pieces of clay. Now don't throw this clay away. Don't throw this away, because even though it's white and it's got alcohol ink on it, the alcohol ink will color your clay. Let's see what it does to this clay. Sorry for the noise. But I want to see how it changes the color of this clay, and we may be able to use this to back the pieces that we've just used. This is interesting. Look at this. I don't know if you can see it. But see, it's got sort of a pattern in that. I might use this to back one of these. So what you can do, and I should have gotten some bales out. You just want to make sure these are all loose from the tile. And since I used silver accent on the silk screen, I think I will use silver. You know what would be nice? I don't know how that would work. Hold on just a minute while I get my bales. Sorry about that. I just had a brainstorm, which happens a lot. I'm thinking that I'm going to, instead of, make sure this silver paint is dry, but I think instead of backing it with a plain color of clay, since my little bales look good from either side, I think I will I'll back these, you know, with each other. Let me see. What I probably need to do with those bales, though, is to use a little bit of wire. And I have such a small craft room Luckily, I can get to just about everything if I just knew which drawer to look in. Let's see what I've got for wire here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a little piece of wire, and this is coated wire. I probably shouldn't use coated wire. Sorry. Let me get a different wire. This doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can be very plain, as a matter of fact. But what I think I'm going to do is just cut a little piece of wire, maybe 1 inch long. Put it through the hole on my bale. Probably should fold it in half first. But I'm just going to put the wire through the hole on the bale, and I'm just going to give it a little twist just so that the wire will stay in the bale, and just a little hook or whatever on the end. So now what I'm going to do, let me get a piece of paper. I'm going to put this space down. I know you probably can't see it since it's white on white, but I'm going to take this little bale with the wire in it, and I'm going to embed this in this piece of clay, and then I will place another one on top of it. And what I have is now a reversible pendant. So you just need to tidy up the edges a little bit, but this will have this on one side and this on the other side. So if you're wearing it and it flips around, it won't have an ugly back on it or have a solid back. And I didn't do very good since I wasn't looking over top of it. I didn't match these up very well, but I'm going to be able to fiddle it with my fingers. And then what I'll do is I'll smooth the edges here. Whoops, I'm out of frame as usual. I'm going to smooth the edges here with my finger and blend those seams. If it doesn't work well with your fingers, you can use a tool. I have all kinds of tools. But just use a tool to help blend this seam on the side. And if you can't get it blended like this, I'm having a hard time because I didn't take the time to make sure that I did it right. I was thinking too much about videoing instead of my end result of my project. But if you can smooth your seams, then you can rub the edge with a silver mica powder. If you can't seem to get the seams blended to where they don't show, and I can, it's just going to take longer than I want to do, then you could take another piece of clay, maybe like this piece that, I don't think this is going to be long enough. Let me roll this through. This is at a number 3. Let me go down to a number 5 and see if I can get this a little longer. But what I will do, actually the first thing I ought to do is bake this. I ought to bake this first. But let me do the other one. And I'll save that for after it's baked. I'll put this down, face down. I know you're not seeing me cut the wire, but all I'm doing is cutting a small piece of wire. And you'll take the small piece of wire. I think this time I'll bend it in half first, just so it makes it easier. Slip it through the hole in my bail. Pinch them together, and then just get a pair of pliers and give it a twist. And then if you want, you can put a little hook in the end, which just kind of helps. I bent it the wrong way and now it's not straight. But it makes it easier for it to stay in the clay. Let me just straighten it out a little bit. Let's see how this works. And just put this down on the clay so that it you can just lay your bail down if you want, and then take that and just press it into the clay. It doesn't have to be straight. All you're doing is securing the bail in the clay. And this one I may be a little bit more careful about how I place it. So it'll be easier to blend the seams. I guess if I start up at the top, it'll make it easier. And just try to match your sides. They should match since you cut them with the same cutter, but handling them sometimes will stretch one a little bit. But I think this one will be easier to smooth the seams, so maybe I can show you two ways of finishing the edges. I've got ink on my hands, so it's not doing very well. Let me smooth with this tool. I'm hoping the color being in here won't matter if I'm using the powders, but this way I'll have one that I can put a clay edge around and one that I'll use mica powders to show you how to finish off a pendant. I keep forgetting that I'm zoomed in. I apologize. That's the one thing I have a hard time with, is zooming in and out. But I'm not going to take the time to finish smoothing this. I can do this off camera. But again, I wanted to show you, you've got this side. And see how you've got the green and the yellow and the blue all kind of modeled behind the silver. And then here, it's an entirely different look. This isn't quite as yellow as it's showing up on your picture. And then we have this one that has the flower on one side and swirls, and then that on the other. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up these edges, and I'm going to bake it, and then I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. This is still not baked, but I got to thinking about finishing up this edge with a powder and thought it might be better to finish it off before I bake. So let me get some of this off of my fingers before I mess everything up. And you can see here where I've got some, this is, let me put the top on it. This is, well, the picture's not on it, but it's Mona Lisa silver leaf powder in, well, it's leaf powder, metal leaf powder, but it's in platinum. And this has just become one of my favorite powders because it's really, really silver. But you can see here where I've already added it to the side here. And I'm just going to continue brushing it with my finger. Just be careful that you don't get it on the sides, because you just have it on the sides and not on the front or back, because you don't want to smear silver all over your pretty silk screen. And in order to get up in the corner, you can use a little brush, not corner, but to get up next to the bail. Just get some on a brush and put it up close to the bail. There. I got a little bit of powder on the front, just like I told you not to do, but that's alright. It will, I'll try to get that off before I put it in the oven. I also dropped this one into my drawer, so there's some little places on it I need to kind of get rid of them. But anyway, you get the idea that you can just put mica powder on the edges and then bake it, and then it'll be finished when it comes out of the oven. The other way I will show you after they're baked. Be back. Okay, I'm back, and these are baked now. Excuse the light, there's the sun coming in my window right now, and I don't have a shade. All I have is a curtain. But these turned out really nice. They kind of shimmer, and everything's good. Now if you want to, and what I will probably do, is I will put a finish on it. I will probably use the Sculpey satin glaze, but the Sculpey satin glaze, but I will probably wait and do that after I'm finished with everything else I'm doing. Now this one here is the one that I put the powders on, the platinum powder, before I baked it, and you can see that it put a really nice silver finish. So this one is pretty much done. I don't know if you can see the little dots that are all over it. This side is even better with the kind of a fishnet type thing. But the platinum powder, once you spread it on to the clay, when it's raw, it will stick, so it will not come off. If you would feel better, you know, just for whatever, whenever you glaze this, you can put some glaze over the powder too. It's not going to hurt it. Now this one, we didn't, or I didn't, do anything with the edges because they were, remember this was the one that had the funny edges to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a piece of raw clay, and it doesn't matter how thick it is because we can trim it. And what I'm going to use is the mixture that we had with the alcohol inks, the scraps from the white. And another thing I don't know if I've told you this before or not, but whenever you're bonding raw clay to baked clay, you need to use something like, what I use is liquid Kato, and I just do a little bit. Let me put it on my workstation. Just put a drop of it there. And this is just like clay. It's the same ingredients except it's liquid. And I'll just spread this along the edge. So when I add the strip of clay, it will have something to stick to. Doesn't have to be a thick layer as long as it's there. And that will help with the bond between the raw clay and the baked clay. Wipe that off my finger. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this strip of baked clay and I'm going to butt it up against the bale and just give it a little press. And it doesn't really matter because this is going to be wider, but just try to keep it fairly straight. You don't want to make a mess out of it. But you don't have to be real careful about the edges or anything because we're going to trim those. Just make sure that you go over it and that it's coming into contact with that liquid clay. And let me use a knife. Might be easier than sticking a blade down there. I'll use the blunt side. Well, this isn't very blunt. Let me use the blunt side of a blade to get this down where the bale is, and then I'll slice it with an X-Acto knife and just use the blade to press it down around that bale. Now you can use your knife or you can use your blade. It doesn't really matter, but again, go around and make sure that it's all stuck. Then take your blade and just run it around the edge here and trim off the excess. And you'll do this on both sides. For some reason this clay is pretty soft. I don't know. Maybe because the sun's been shining and it's warmed up in my craft room. And I had the oven on. Just tidy it up as you go. Sorry I'm quiet. This is another one of those moments where I'm using my tongue to help me cut this. Couldn't do it without it. Now you don't have to use green like this ended up being. You can use white clay, black clay. I could have used silver clay since silver is the accent color. but I just, for time's sake, rather than conditioning another color of clay, I just chose to use the scraps. Anyway, I'll continue to trim this all the way around. And now that it's trimmed, I'll just go back and make sure everything is adhered properly. If you want, you can cut a little tiny piece of clay, of this clay. Let's see if I can cut one small enough. To put in this little section right here in front of the bale. And again, you can just take your knife and trim it so that it's flush with the front. And then do the same thing on the other side. Just use a little tiny piece. And press it in that little space. And all that does is gives you a nicer finish around your bale. Otherwise you would see white clay. I think I need a toothpick. Toothpicks are my friend. You can do a lot with a toothpick. And I think instead of using the knife, I'm going to use my blade to shave that off. That worked much better. So there you go. There's two different pendants. You can put this on a ball chain. You can put it on a silver chain. You can put it on suede. You can use a organza ribbon. You can hang it from anything. But after this bakes, and then you put, I put the finish on it, the varnish, these will be done. So hope you can enjoy doing the inks and the silk screens together. It really gives a really nice look. And I will see you again soon. Bye.